establishment of online registrations, electronic registers will improve the registration process. And therefore, there is no doubt that a great registration systems is highly dependent on the ICT system. So, ladies and gentlemen, the impact of the reforms, by summary, I think I still have like 2 minutes. Improvement in the business ranking, doing business report, competitiveness, not within only Uganda, but also within the East African community, better creation of a better investment climate, easy and timely registrations, more registrations or formalization, which will eventually reduce the informal sector, increase in revenue collection, NTR, and improving the business sector because it will be formal. We have opportunities that we can utilize. We have support from the World Bank and other stakeholders. We have good leadership. We have strategic partnerships with the agencies that I mentioned. We are decentralized our services, and we continue to decentralize our services. We have a large untapped informal sector, which we think we can formalize and put in order. We have introduced strict compliance through filing of returns, legal reform, and political support. The challenges are still manual systems that we use, the financial constraints, which is a main cry for other agencies, main human resource constraints, low levels of sensitization. In conclusion, URSB continues to undertake reforms that are aimed at reducing the processing time for businesses, embracing technologies through automation, and improving all transactions. And we believe this can be achieved in the shortest time possible. Thank you so much for listening. Arthur?
So we can get to the portal and maybe make some bit of demonstration of how it works. We can demonstrate like one license, but those who have tablets and their laptops and phones, you can put in businesslicenses.go.ug for any license, and there are a lot of criteria you can use to search for a license. You can search directly for a license, but also you can search by business location. For example, if we go to Kampala and we want to search for a trading license, or any of this, in this menu you can search for example, professional services, and you get the business type, for example, engineering. Then you can get the necessary results, and you can select the license. No, we didn't get any results there. We can check tourism, and we get hotels. Business location we can get in Kampala. We can get like energy, and then we can get like electricity, what we are talking about, electricity. And then we get the licenses. So we have 7 licenses there, and you can be able to search for maybe a distribution license. So you can get all relevant information of a distribution license there. Like the license requirements, you can see the license requirements, the legal and financial status of the applicant. You can download the forms. We have all the forms there. You can also know the issuing agency and where they are located. You can see the telephone, the physical address, the email, the website, operating hours. You can also get the directions to know where that agency is located. So we note that this is now informational. It will help the public know about the requirements. But under the SEDEP project, we plan to make it transactional, so that we will start with pilot agencies so that you are able to transact after finding the relevant license that you need. You are able to apply online, and this application is received by the respective agency, processed, and also you get feedback Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. We just heard from the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, which is just one of the implementing agencies of business environment reforms. And like they've talked about, they are the hub or the host of the e-licensing portal. This does not mean that it takes away the mandate of the agencies that issue the licenses, but it coordinates that process. So we've heard from Ms. Mercy Kentaro, who is the acting director for business registration, and Mr. Arthur Kwesiga. I think at this junction, before we go to the next part of our program, which will be to feel the impact, which is from the private sector, I'd like us to do some introduction so we know who is here, because we skipped that earlier. Okay? So we have Honorable Gerald Sendaula, who we've already heard from. He is the chair of the Business Licensing and Regulatory Reform Committee. We have Mr. Moses Chivirige from the World Bank Group. Next to him. Okay. Then we have Mr. Gideon Badagawa, who is the ED, Private Sector Foundation, Uganda. And in implementing reforms, the private sector is very key. We have to keep consulting with them. We have Dr. Peter Ngatajize from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, National Coordinator of the Competitiveness Secretariat. So we'll ask the ladies to please introduce themselves. No? We have Madame Caroline Ndaula, who is also from the World Bank Group, and specifically in charge of the competitiveness and climate in business environment. We have Madame Ruth Sevatindira, who is the president of the Uganda Law Society. Thank you. So you may ask her when we break out and we have separate sessions. She's going to participate now, but also later she's available for any further questions. Behind her we have Madame Sarah Nachibuka.
Since implementation of the reforms actually set forth, and of course many of us have been closely monitoring, but of course we need to formalize this monitoring progress of the implementation of these reforms. And we set out, especially on business licensing, we set out on a number of reforms, some of which actually have been illustrated by the URSB. And I think on the very outset, I want to say that we need to agree, private sector and government, to set up a committee or a task force that will quantify and itemize the progress that is being made by reform. If you're talking about electricity, if you're talking about land registry, if you're talking about registering other properties, licensing reforms and so on, so that when we come to a session like this, we are able to clearly say what is happening and what's not happening. And it's very important to lock in the private sector, because then they give you the experience, because they are the doers, they are the practitioners. If you're talking about a trade license, if you're talking about movement of goods across the borders, these are the people that are having first-hand experiences, and we need to lock them in. When URSB was making the presentation, I was a bit disturbed with the rankings, because now we seem to have slipped even more. Last year, I think we were talking about 132nd. I saw something like 150 out of 189 countries in the report that is coming, which means over the 1 year period, nothing much has happened on starting a business, on trade across borders, on connecting electricity, on registering property, and so on and so forth. And yet we know that systems have been upgraded. I mean, if you look at the land registry and what has been happening there, one would imagine that if you walked in there, you should be able to verify your land instrument within the same day. And actually, yes, this is happening in a number of areas, like Jinja, like Barara, like Masaka. You can quickly verify your land instrument. Of course, in other areas, it's not the case. And we need to do more. A lot of reforms have happened. under the support of the World Bank, under the PSCP2. But talking to, for instance, the Land Registry Division in the Ministry of Lands, and talking to the minister himself, Honorable Migereko, I think the challenge is the human resource that is sitting behind these systems. And we have had a lot of complaints from quantity surveyors. We have had a lot of from the lawyers. The Uganda Law Society is here. You know, mortgages, the issue of all, it's a nightmare working in a land registry and verifying these properties. It's a big, big, big nightmare. It still takes more than 3 months for you to do that. I remember when Honorable called me and was very frustrated that verification of his property had taken more than 8 months. And we had to call Richard in the Ministry of Lands. And it did not take a day. It did not take a day. Now the question is, who is playing it right and who is playing it wrong? Are the systems right? Yes, they are right, because if you walk there and they know you, you will verify your property within the same day. But if they don't know you, then the process becomes a 3-month process. So the whole issue is the human resource sitting. I don't know whether they need to be trained, whether they are losing values or morals. There is moral decadence. I think we need to align the efficient systems now that we have, because government has put in a lot of money to improve the land registry. But if you still remain with the staffing that you had earlier on, with all the kind of corruption that we see and hear about, then we are not going to help improve the business environment, because all the investors that are coming, you know, verifying the land for investment, verifying the collateral, land for the collateral, requires that Ministry of Lands, Land Division becomes a lot more efficient. The issue of the work permits, for instance, immigration. It will cost you more than 2,500 to get a work permit here for investors. And yet it costs about $400 in Rwanda. Now we are marketing East Africa as one investment destination. We need to be careful here. Who is getting it right? Who is getting more investments? Who is getting less investment within East Africa? Because at the end of the day, each one of us is a sovereign state. So while we market ourselves as one investment destination, we must look at the legal systems, the regulatory systems, the efficiency of our institutions. And you're talking about URA, you're talking about immigration, you're talking about KCCA, NEMA, you're talking about UIA. And I'm happy about the reforms that are going on, especially on the issue of the one-stop shop. Yes, it has taken so long. Remember when we talked about, I think it was 1.5 years ago, when we were told that Cabinet had actually approved this one-stop shop in August 2011. And today is 2014, we still have not seen this one-stop shop. And one-stop shop, not in the physical sense, but I think what you people are doing, because then you lock in everyone, and we need to expand beyond the 4 that we see here, KCCA, URA, and URSB. I think we need to talk NEMA, we need to talk immigration, we need to talk, all these must come in because they mean a lot to starting a business. People must first come here. So immigration, are we getting it right? Must everyone, of course I know that we need to look for revenues, but must every investor, how do we vet these investors? If investors, serious investors are coming here and we are going to charge $2,500 for a work permit, then it becomes very difficult even to have the professional workers that will come along with them. Paying taxes is now a lot easier, especially with the e-tax system. We are happy, again, with the reforms that have happened cross-border, customs, what we have done, especially the initiatives of URA on the electronic cargo tracking systems. I mean, it takes a lot shorter time to clear through the customs than it did a year ago, 1.5 years ago. You are now looking at less than 5 days to clear through the customs, right from Mombasa across down to Kampala. And it used to be 28 days, and more than that at some point. So we think that these reforms, and these are the parameters against which the bank cost of doing business are actually measured. Cross-border trade, how quickly and how efficient is it to clear your goods come across? And then the whole issue of East Africa, and Chairman alluded to this. I think we need to do a lot, not only to sound as the good boys around, but I think to have efficient systems working with our partners to make sure that while we embrace and accommodate everyone as Uganda.
Thank you. I'm so grateful today that 6 years ago I was interviewed by International Finance Corporation, and I was wondering why they came to our office and to find out what problems we are facing and the challenges we faced when we are registering Delight Uganda Limited. It was not easy for us. I will repeat exactly what I told them. It took us a year to register Delight Uganda Limited. The first thing that I was not informed on how to register the company. What I knew was to start business, and I woke up 4:30 and I started my business. After time, I said, I need to register the company. After doing the business, the illegal business, going to the border, trying to do the smuggling, but I said, I need to get organized, get focused, and register the company. But I didn't know what to do. I started inquiring from friends. What can I do? How can I register the company? They said, go there in the registration of companies. The first time I remember, I footed from Kawempe to town. I went there, I explained to them. They said, you have to contact a lawyer. Then I asked them, now how will I go to the lawyer when I don't have money? I've just footed from Kawempe up to here. They said, it's hard for you, you cannot do it. I went back, I proceeded with my business. After time, I realized police was following me up. I said, today I have to go back and register the company. When I went there, they gave me the contact of a lawyer. I went to the lawyer wanted $1 million. I said, I only have 100,000. We agreed, and he said, okay, you are going to deposit your 100. When you bring the balance, we shall register. After 3 months again, I went, then I had raised 400,000. We registered the company. He said, I will give you the original books after you have done what? You have paid the balance. So it took me long to raise the money to pay the balance to get my original books. Now I started now making the Cheers juice. I do not have the trademark. I said, no, okay. Somebody told me you have to go to the Ministry of Trademarks. I went, I didn't know even where Ministry of Trade was. When I reached there, they said there's some money you have to pay. But I had some little money to reserve the name. I said, okay, I want our trademark to be Cheers. I picked the number, I deposited, said when you get the money, you come and pay. I want to tell you, it took me another 6 months to raise the money, but thank God the staff I dealt with reserved my name. Now another company, foreign company came in, wanted to use my trademark. Because I was already in the market, then the man called me, said, Julian, if you don't come, another person has come to register your what? Your trademark, but at least you deposited. Then I had to look for money. I told him, give me 1 month, I will get the money. Then I went, I registered. It was after that, to get the NEMA certificate, that was a nightmare. It took me another year. I would go and they tell me come back. At times they will not allow us to enter the offices. So all that, when I shared with the International Finance Corporation, I told them the challenges. Then they said, yes, Julian, we are going to ease the whole process. So when I compare what we went through registering Delight Uganda Limited, and last year we registered another company, Best Parker Uganda Limited. That company packs the PET bottles. It was so easy for me. I managed to go to Uganda Investment Authority, and they made me to go through each and everything. Then I went back to the office. I went to the e-portal. I searched We searched online in my office. We searched for the name, and we went for the registration. It took me 1 day to register the company. I did not pay the lawyer. Everything was easy for me. And I'm seeing now the improvement, how things was, that is 18 years ago, and even 6 years ago when I was interviewed, and how things are today. Really, things have improved. Even now today when we are paying the taxes, the money you will release to pay to the bank, it will on your mobile number that you say Delight Uganda Limited, you have paid this. At least now you know, even it's the way of doing business has been more simplified than the way it is. Even registering the company, even the attitude, the people's attitude has changed. You can ask them so many questions, somebody can give you time to listen, understand. Apart from NEMA, we still have a big challenge with NEMA. When I was trying to get the environmental impact assessment for Chigogwa, where our company is, I walked several times. They would end me down at the reception. Then one day I asked the girl, why are you stopping me here? I want to go and see the officer concerned. It's now 1 year. We have started the construction. We don't have the permit. I must go up. The lady said, no, he's not in the office, the one you want to see. I said, no. Today I'm going to be here, and I wait for him when he's coming back. And we quarreled. From there, I went to Uganda Investment Authority. I reported them. I said, it can't work like this. I remember at that time, Professor Maggie called them and said, okay, why are you mistreating our investors? Even the local investors, you cannot give them their due respect. It is after reporting them, after a follow-up from Uganda Investment Authority, that's when I was allowed in even to enter and see somebody concerned. And when I look at it, policies have been put in place, but the officers, those who are handling offices, we need to work to be a servant, to serve, and to have our country at heart, and to take it that we are servants ready to serve, not to be bosses or want to be corrupted. But really, I'm so grateful for the improvement, because when I compare the time I was interviewed, they kept on coming to my office, say, is there any change? Is there any improvement? I said, yes, there is a great change. There's a great improvement. And lastly, I remember when I was interviewed by NTV, I said, yes, things are much better. And I strongly believe if we join up hands together, the private sector, the people who are working with the government, we can make life easier, and we can do better business and ease the life of doing business. I really want to thank the World Bank. I want to thank the trademark and the organizers, that at least today we can talk from the private sector and share our success story. To me, this is the success story. Things were so worse, things are so better, and we expect things to be much better than today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mrs. Adjeri. We'll quickly move to the next section of today, the supporting factor. So we're going to hear from the World Bank Group. We'll start with Mrs. Caroline Ndaula, who is the program lead of trade and competitiveness at the World Bank Group.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, in your capacities here, we greet you all. The World Bank Group in August this year undertook a survey just to ascertain the impact of the reforms that were undertaken under the Uganda Investment Climate Program. And we found out that many businesses are not aware of the reforms that have actually been undertaken. And the purpose of this forum is to communicate those reforms, but also to tell you that the World Bank is going to continue to support this work under the World Bank, and it will be managed by Moses Chibirige. But I thought it is important for us to acknowledge the participation of the private sector in this reform exercise, because it has been instrumental in ensuring that government plays an instrumental role in this work. And specifically, Honorable Sendaula and your committee, President of the Law Society is also present here. We also want to acknowledge government because they have contributed 31% of the budget that funded these reforms, and definitely that can't be underscored. We have seen ownership of these reforms. We have seen active participation of the agencies that were involved in this reform. And we want to acknowledge the agencies that have actually shown interest in these reforms, especially Uganda Registration Services Bureau, KCCA, and Uganda Revenue Authority. One of the issues that we have not talked about and mentioned here is the business taxation reforms that I thought are also critical for mention here. 3 of the interventions that we supported were the establishment of the micro-tax segment to ensure that SMEs are encouraged to come into the tax net. We also did a rationalization of the tax incentive structure, and basically here was to ensure that discretionary tax incentives are focused on productive sectors, especially agriculture and tourism. The third was to look at the tax appeals tribunal. We all know that that tribunal exists. However, it's not being utilized. Most tax disputes are taken to commercial courts. So what we did was to review the law and find out exactly where the gaps were, and that has been strengthened. So we know now, through the reforms that have been undertaken, it will be the tax appeals tribunal will be the first point of recourse for all tax disputes. I now want to call my colleague Moses Chibirige to talk about the sustainability of these reforms that will continue under his project. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. The World Bank provides support to government at the request of the government. We've been there for the last 10 to 15 years providing support in terms of doing business. And the focus has been in 3 projects. The first one was the private sector competitive project. The second one was the second private sector competitive project. And now the third one we are now managing from June is the Competitive and Enterprise Development Project with an acronym CEDEP. What have we done and what are we doing in terms of sustainability? Arthur and URSB, they have talked about the developments as URSB in terms of business registration and business licensing. We supported URSB in the old project, and the new project, we again supporting them with most of the activities they've mentioned. Our feeling is that in the next 3 to 5 years, when this project is ongoing, we realize the country should be able to realize bigger changes. But I think, like all speakers have mentioned here, I think there are basically 3 important things in all this work. And if we could do them, there will be a very big change. We can buy the equipment, we can put up structures, but unless we do these 3 things, we will be able to move. And these are people, 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 period. We need a change in the way people are handling equipment, in the way people are doing their work. It's fundamental and it's very, very important. Let me touch on another area which I think a lot of people have mentioned briefly, but extremely very important. That is land administration reform. We've supported government at its request reforms in the land sector. We've done it in the last 8 years, and we're providing additional support in the next 5 years. Government has established, with support from the World Bank, the land information system.
Then I would like to acknowledge and also thank other people who volunteer, who have accepted over a period to be serving on the various committees formed by government. Government has a very big bureaucracy. When I left university, I joined the private sector. A friend of mine, Agustino Okero, we were living, and this lady Mukasa, she's I think a minister of finance in the Uganda government, and late Madam Chirunarwa and others, we were leaving university. And my friends told me, because we had had Barclays Bank visiting the university to recruit management trainees. So I and a few others, we volunteered, we offered ourselves for interview, and I'd worked for Barclays during one of my vocations, so I offered myself for the interview, and they declared that I'd been successful. So these friends told me, say, look, asked me, why do you want to join private enterprise? You see, the government at that time, and I want to tell you then, you know, you'll be very envious, but that was the trend. In the early 70s, late 60s, the university graduate had a very big market in our setup. And so Barclays had offered that once we joined as management trainees, they would take us to the UK for 2 years to study for the diploma in banking so that we are bankers in real sense, professionally. And at the same time, that if you came to the bank with your driving permit, you would, in the second day of your joining, get a new car. You'd be in a new car. Then you would get a house. So for me, the fringe benefits counted a great deal in the private sector. But these friends talked about job security. Said if you become a civil servant, you are guaranteed. You have a job. You are permanent and pensionable. So, and every day I wind back my computer and I get to see really what it is. That when we talk about that time, look at the civil service, see exactly what my friends wanted to get in the civil service, and then compare what the private sector and how the private sector operate, then I see we are all together, with due respect to the great civil servants who are here, we are very many miles apart, and that's very worrying, because we really need to get together somehow, because things have changed substantially. Things have changed, and when I became a politician and found myself on a full-time job, that was my second job. I'd never been employed elsewhere. I was employed by Barclays, for whom I worked all the way, then joined politics, and then found myself as a minister now full-time.